Hey, we going? Hello out there in radio. Oh, is this radio? Cab 17. We were talking last time about a particular thing that I did not even get to the heart of. But it is, as I suggest, oftentimes the case in affairs such as this. It was so simple I started to just let it go by just mentioning it, by driving by it, and tell everybody on the bus, hey, look, it's a Washington Monument. And everybody looked, and then you say, and over here is the Mississippi River. Say, real fast. But there's so many people now, the more that we do this, that seem to, or that do express some interest or say that they enjoy this from afar, and very often quickly followed up by the comment that I have no idea what it is, but boy, I enjoy it. And we have even been using the terms that this could be said to be about trying to think more than you have to, and then with all the conditions, having to point out all the obvious nisiosos of how everyone who tries to pass for being intellectual at all would say, well, I do that anyway. I certainly think more than many people, whereas they don't. You're either thinking as you should, or you're thinking willfully more than you have to for no apparent purpose. But to push it a little bit further, I was saying that you, for a temporary map, that you could look at thinking more than you have to being a way that the result, again just temporary, this is not the last word, but would result in a new kind of thought. And this new thought would be, and all ordinary people are going to say, oh, I can do that, but the new thought would be thought that could analyze itself. Now, under all ordinary neural conditions, back under every routine brain landscape of everyone, where you are thinking is based upon polarized energy. It is only physically possible to think under any kind of ordinary conditions by having a polarized opposition in operation in your brain physically. Now, such thinking, as opposed to analyzing oneself, let us say for the time being that such thinking can see itself. Let's just say that. But now, what kind of sight is this? Good question, because I'm going to tell you what kind of sight it is. It's reflective. That ordinary thought, if I whip it on someone and said, well, there's some kind of extraordinary activity, drugs you can take, and if you give me all your money and probably 2 or 3 new sets of tires, I'll show you how to do this secret that you can create thought, you can produce thought that will analyze itself. And ordinary people go, whoo. Now, I've been taken in by some good people, but you're no threat. Hell, I do that all the time. I think about my own thoughts all the time. I think, uh-oh, I made a verbal fox pass just then, or uh-oh, boy, I took a good shot. I made that guy look bad, or uh-oh, wait a minute, I shouldn't think that. If anybody knew I was thinking that, ooh, that's... And so people would say that. People would say, well, all you got to do is just be walking around conscious, and you're analyzing your own thoughts. That is, if you're an up-to-date, sophisticated, reasonably intelligent person. But let us say, just to humor, let's say that's something else, but let's call what ordinary people are talking about, that their thoughts can see themselves, which we could probably get a consensus of city opinion to give that as a workable definition for being conscious, for the kind of intellectual self-awareness that would, by some accounts, distinguish man from a sawhorse, or even a horse, a live horse in some cases, according to where you are in the food chain, I guess. And so ordinary people would say, now wait, there is something going on in my brain. It's not just some kind of mechanical activity of which I have no awareness. Because I do have an awareness, which is probably some reasonable, even dictionary definition of consciousness. It's thought that in some way is self-aware, that is reflective of itself, that a man is not conscious unless he's aware that he's conscious, that you could take someone in a brown suit. No. Someone in a coma is what you meant to say. Well, same thing. A real cheap brown suit will lead to a coma. Don't anybody in the clothing trade write me. I'll come up to New York and I'll show you how to start a flood, not a fire up on 7th Avenue. But at any rate, you could have a man in a coma and in a brown suit. And you can hook up these machines to his head. You know what I'm talking about? What do they call them? A meter. No, see, I shoot taxi drivers still doing that. They can hook up machinery. That important equipment they have down at the place where doctors hang out, you know. And they can say, wait a minute, this guy's brain is operational. Now, he's laying there, you know, looking like an attorney that was accused of being honest, somebody in shock. And so the man's laying there, and for all intents and purposes, he's kind of out of it. You know, you ask him such things as, hey, I got this good-looking girl out there in a plastic raincoat that's offered to paint your house for $100. And the guy just lays there. But the machinery on his brain. The machinery says that the man's brain is percolating. But then, just by ordinary definition, you'd say, all right, but he is not conscious. Now, he has a brain that's operational, but right now, for whatever reason, maybe the shock of the suit or the girl or whatever, right now he is not conscious. That is, he's not aware that he's thinking. And so then those same people would take their big old finger and say, so see, you're wrong, talking about me, because just ordinary people. There is a difference that an ordinary person, if they're not in a coma, a brown suit or driving a cab or a defrocked attorney or something, then an ordinary person does analyze their own thought. They do reflect on what they're thinking. People don't just wander around in their brain operating and them not aware of it. You know that your brain is operating. If it's not, you are indeed in a coma. You are not conscious in the ordinary sense. Oh, all right. Picky. It's not so. There is something else, toward which I am crudely pointing. Let us say that ordinary thought does see itself. That just what I went through all that ordinary people, if they would say, well, just to be walking around sane and intelligent, you are aware of your own consciousness. You are conscious of your own consciousness. You are aware of your own awareness, anything they want to call it. All right. But let me say, what that is let's just call it, that kind of thought can see itself, as opposed to, leave me with analyze itself for a minute, and we'll get to that. Let's say that it can see itself. But what does it see? How does it see? It sees its reflection. Where does it see its reflection? It sees its reflection in the one inescapable, absolutely required aspect of the brain, and not just the physical part, then the verbal part, the mystical part, as they like to think, the spooky part that they cannot put their finger on, intelligence. The mind, as they keep thinking, is different from the brain. All right, so, but it's in the brain, it's physically, it is chemical and electrical in the brain, what I'm about to say, and it's also in the operations of the intellect. It's where ordinary thought can see itself. Well, you going to make us guess? In its opposition. There is no way for a human to think, as we've been through this many times. You can't think. If that's too tricky, you understand you can't speak. So you would not be thinking. You cannot speak until you have how many words? You can't speak with one word. You've got to have two words so that one word makes some sense, so that you know it's not the other word. If it's just one word, it's a noise. It's a grunt. You got to have two words. Now, that should be simple enough once we've dragged it out. But literally, tangibly, physically, electrochemically, in the brain, energy. Here, energy out in the cosmos, in the stars. But here, you cannot think one thought. There's got to be two thoughts. And it doesn't matter what, but there's got to be two thoughts or you can't have one thought. How does thinking at the ordinary level, would people want to say, wait a minute, I do analyze what I think. I am aware of what I think. I do think about what I think. You can see, ordinary thought can see itself, but consider its only source, the only way in which it sees itself. It sees its reflection, which, not Not too bad so far, comma. But where is its reflection? One place and one place only. In its opposition. That if you had, let's break it down to two thoughts. That everything, you got good thoughts, correct thoughts, and incorrect thoughts. Or proper thoughts and improper thoughts, according to whether you consider yourself a moralist or a regular human being. All of your correct thoughts, all of your true thoughts, all of your piercing thoughts, all of your proper thoughts, all of your good thoughts, all of your neat thoughts, all of your groovy thoughts, all of them. The kind of thoughts that make you, by God, what you are. How do they know? How do they say, well, yes, I analyze myself, I reflect on myself, I meditate upon my own activities? Yeah. Go with me for a second. You see yourself. Your kind of thought sees itself. Okay, I'll go for that. But how does it see itself? All of your good thoughts, all of your proper thoughts. We're not questioning that. To you, that's what they are, and by God, they are. But how do they know what they are? There's only one way. They look over and they see the reflection. But who is causing the reflection? Who made the mirror? Who's holding the mirror up? All of the bad thoughts. All of the erroneous thoughts, the improper thoughts, the non-neat thoughts, the anti-groovy thoughts. All the thoughts that you would say, hey, those are not my thoughts. Those are the kind of thoughts of people who do not reflect upon their own intellectual activity and etc. No. The literal construction of the human intellect at the ordinary level requires two thoughts, and to put it a little more broadly, it requires that there be opposing thought to every thought you have, every single thought. There is no exception. There's none. You can look anytime you want to. If you look and say, yes, there is, well, there you are. Unless some of you are a little slow. If you are, take a cab, all right? For every thought, for any thought, for you to have it, for you to be aware of it, just as ordinary people would say, to be conscious, to actually be thinking and to be aware that you're thinking. For you to be an individual human with a sense of unique, singular personality and all the other neat, groovy, proper things that ordinary people have and do. To do that, there has to be half of your consciousness, half of your brain activity, half of all you know is made up of the opposing team. For every thought you have inside of your own brain, now I know ordinary people, as you know, they'll go, oh, wait a minute. I'm aware of it, but I don't hold these thoughts. I only hold proper thoughts. I only hold true thoughts. Now, I'm aware of untrue thoughts. I'm aware of improper thoughts because I've heard about them. Well, you rascal, you. Boy, you get around, don't you? Yes, hey. I didn't grow up in the back of a deserted DeSoto. I've been around. For the intellect to operate at any particular level, there is opposing, counteractive, thought in your brain. And you got to get past saying, well, I'm just aware that, in other words, I know 2 and 2 is 4. But I have run across people, believe it or not, that say 2 and 2 is 5. Now, I know that's not true. But now I have the knowledge in my brain that says that there are people who say that 2 and 2 is 5. But don't you, that is me, accuse me of holding that kind of knowledge because that's ridiculous. Won't you agree? And I go, all right, I agree. But I don't have that. I don't think 2 and 2 is 5. I've never thought 2 and 2 was 5. I don't plan to ever think it. I cannot consider the circumstances that would make me. But I'm aware of the fact that there are people who have incorrect opinions about mathematics. What else do I have to say? Well, all right. The shortest way to get from Queens to downtown is to take the Mahler Expressway. That shows the superfluousness of going past that which it should be obvious. There is no way that ordinary thought, seeing its own reflection, now it passes. We're not being sarcastic and picking on ordinary people because the ordinary people are in everyone. But that which ordinary people call reflective thought, that which ordinary people would say that they analyze their own thinking, that they are self-conscious, they monitor their own thought processes, they try and realign when they get off base, they take in new information, they're willing to change their judgments and their opinions as new facts become available. They say all that. But it's seeing itself. Thought. It is seeing itself in its reflection of its always present counterpart, which is its opposition, which is the visiting team. It's always there. It's the only way that ordinary thought can be self-aware, which still, let's call it for the time being, let's say it can see itself, not analyze itself. It can see itself. Now, just seeing oneself in this sense, without being able to analyze oneself, just seeing oneself through the reflection, not in a reflection of some nefarious scheme of things that are set up, some kind of trick mirrors that distort your thinking. We don't need overkill. No need for that, folks. No need for that. Of course, I know there'd be many people, if they were following this kind of nonsense, would say, wait a minute, if we're going to take this kind of symbolism that far, then wait a minute, life in some way has dealt me a phony baloney hand here because, they put up trick mirrors, that make a nice-looking person like myself look like a lard ass, or I get all out of shape looking at those trick mirrors, and that's what life's had to do to my thinking. Gotcha. It's not necessary. Because if you say, well, it's some kind of trick reflection of my thinking, I didn't say that. You said that. And you can say, yeah, but other people said that. Are you listening? Your reflection. I had some great ideas, and some people went, wait a minute, I read something that you wrote. Aren't you so-and-so? And I said, yes. And they said, I read that, and let me tell you how you're wrong. And they began to criticize what I did, and I realized those people didn't even understand what I meant. There it is, life, again, distorting what I tried to do. See? They weren't listening. All you're doing is seeing your reflection. Yeah, but it's the wrong reflection. There's no such thing as a wrong reflection. Well, they're incorrect. Okay, I accept that. But how do you know you are correct? Well, for one thing, we're right at a place where I do know I'm correct because they're incorrect. They don't even understand what I tried to say. Now, I could do all that and then go, what are you doing that for? Are you insinuating I'm not even listening to myself? No, I just, I had a gnat in my ear. This kind of reflection that ordinary people would have, this kind of self-awareness of their own thinking, let me point out, in no way would even begin to resemble any kind of analysis. Let's say even impartial analysis, but since we've done enough damage to the word impartial, let's redefine it right quick to us personally. It would be for a revolutionist use for me saying impartial. It's got to be fresh. That is, this analyzation, this kind of view of one's thoughts looking at itself. It would have to be an absolutely fresh and useful view. And it couldn't be a reflection. And it would have to be a kind of fresh view that was not born with a Siamese twin brother, which is the basis of all other views, of all ordinary views, all ordinary information. All ordinary energy has, at birth, an evil twin. I just said that to make you soap opera fans happy. It has a twin. That's how you know you're born. You look over and your Siamese twin holds up a mirror. And don't tell me, well, I don't like what I see. Or don't tell me, well, maybe. If you're seeing anything, you're seeing your reflection. That's the only way ordinary intelligence, that's the only way ordinary consciousness is aware of itself. That's the only way that you would ever know that you were wearing a plain brown suit. If you can see it's very clear, if you can see it, and it's very precise about me doing a lot more, that under any ordinary conditions, thought, no matter what you're thinking, the thought's not the problem, not the content, but the way in which the mind operates at the ordinary level at which everyone is born on this planet, and education, sophistication does not help. Drugs do not give any kind of lasting help, although many people for no real advantage themselves get a taste of something otherwise. It's what makes drugs so historically popular. Certain drugs. Hell, all drugs. But at that level, at which everyone is born, at which everyone is educated, no way out, no exceptions. It's not that somebody is exceptionally dumb, that someone's particularly gifted over here. They may be better reflective in some area of mathematics or arts, etc. But everyone is born and would normally operate at this same level, wherein so-called self-consciousness, awareness, so-called ordinary intelligence, is only aware of itself, is only conscious of itself by reflection. And it is not possible to analyze yourself. That is, the thought cannot analyze itself in any way that would be impartial. That is, it would be fresh, that would be useful, that would give any kind of new information, because if you're simply looking at your reflection, what do you think you're going to learn new? Again, you can fall down, if you're ordinary, to that very, very subtle trap of saying, well, you can learn something new because I reflect on what I think, to use your terms, and very often, to tell you the truth, I'm critical. I don't just take myself and what I think just at face value. No. Leave that to the hoi polloi. Sometimes I'm really hard on myself. That shows I'm getting somewhere, in your dreams, yeah. You can look at your reflection, and it doesn't matter if you say, well, I'm self-critical, and I don't take everything that I think necessarily just off the top of my head. I do not necessarily take it at face value. Okay, so you don't. Except when I'm correct. You can go on, but you never get anywhere new. You're not supposed to. If you're looking at your reflection, you can be, the whole reason I went through that, those of you looking a little blank, it doesn't matter. The subtle trap is for an ordinary person's thoughts to say, well, wait a minute, I do not, to use my terms about reflection being useless, it's not true because I do not look upon my mind's operations. I do not reflect upon my own thinking and just accept it as being, hey, boy, am I big time. Many times I go, wait a minute, that's a pretty cheap shot I'm taking. I don't know if that's true. Where did I hear that? I better re-examine my own opinions. So that shows that I am being reflective. I am analyzing my own thought. Not if you're looking at your reflection of your thought. Not if you're still in the stadium and the only way that you know it's your thought is that it's the home team and you look over there and sure enough, there's the visitors. It's your reflection. And you can criticize all day their uniforms. You can criticize the way they won't play the game. You can say that team, they should have stayed back at their own hometown. They should be sent all down to the Grapefruit League. You can say anything you want to, but the only way that you're aware that you're in the game is that they're there. If they didn't show up, which not be possible, you'd be back in Tacoma. Not Tacoma. If they didn't show up, don't anybody write me from Washington and say, well, it's like being in a coma. I didn't tell you to live there. If the opposing team didn't show up, if we're going to satisfy these people from the great Northwest and pursue this, if the opposing team didn't show up, you wouldn't even be conscious. So you'd stand in the middle of the stadium, out there in the field, and nobody showed up. What would tangibly happen here? Not necessarily a coma, but the kind of state that people are in throughout the days of their lives is just temporary little times out that you just kind of aspiring perhaps to the level of a dog, but if the opposing team is not there, nothing's going on. You do not even have self-consciousness. As I said, that sort of thing is really but all of you who chuckled are aware of the fact. It's like just kind of looking off and thinking, Jesus. You might think to yourself, if you're on the ball, you might say to yourself at least once in your life, like, can you believe it? I almost went to a lower level of intelligence than I am normally. which for some people will shock you right out of it, like, oh no, come on now. I shouldn't be that nice to myself. In the sense that I was saying, the ordinary thought, even though people would say that they do via their consciousness and in their ordinary thinking, that they do analyze themselves and they do reflect on what they think, etc. They can recognize themselves. That's part of being sane in the ordinary sense. That you get up and it's the kind of thought you don't wake up some mornings, or we'll assume you don't, and that you got somebody else's brain. You know, you don't wake up one morning and suddenly you're John Sununu's brain. Or that, you know, Saddam Hussein's brain is in you for a little while, and or who knows who, Brian Gumble, or you wake up and this thing's operating. There's a game going on, and you don't normally think about it, most people, but you wake up in the morning, you know it's you. Thought. Well, now, I'll bet some of you who are laughing, I'll just bet, in theory, if we had enough people here, there'd be people that in a reasonably sized crowd nowadays who have had, I believe they call it, prior emotional problems or mental problems wherein at times you thought, hey, I'm about to lose it. My little ship is about to drift from the arena and I can't get it back. And what is that? Now, you can go to a psychiatrist or somewhere else and get all kinds of explanations and attempted prescriptions, but it's as though the reflection of your own thought has got so distorted that the mirror did get too bad, or the mirror didn't show up, or you wake up and it's like, I don't know who I am. I got to get out of this. Ordinary thought, again, I say in the sense that we're using it now, cannot analyze itself, but it does see its reflection, and it recognizes itself. And that is part of what keeps one from ever being able to think anew, because you recognize yourself, and although nobody ever describes it this way, and in a sense, as the great prophets of the Mideast used to say, you are sorely relieved. That, phew, it's me and I don't have to do anything else. Except, maybe zip up my pants and take a shower once a week and show up for that phony baloney job. But it's like you recognize, and not just, of course, physically, but your thoughts, your thinking processes, they do not analyze themselves, but they recognize themselves from their reflection, from all the things they are not. That you don't never think about it, but your brain does not operate in the same way that a Supreme Court justice's brain does. Assuming they have one. So it does not reflect on itself, but you recognize yourself. You wake up in the morning and you're having the same old nightmares, same old dreams, the same old thoughts, and you recognize yourself through the reflection. And you're so relieved that nobody goes any further. Then you can later argue with somebody like me if we were to get in such a silly discussion and say, you're wrong. I analyze myself. In fact, an ordinary person could have been listening to this, I don't know why, for the last 45 minutes and say, everything you've said, you're proving my own point, they would say. That you're just denying, you're disproving everything that you start out claiming, because everything you're describing that you're saying people don't do, I do. I do it all the time. I know. Except for a real subtle little part. Because they would say, I think about my own thoughts, I worry about them, I have gone to psychiatrists, no need to be ashamed of it. I've read books, I reflect on my thoughts, I try to analyze what I'm doing, and as a matter of fact, most of the people I know are very similar to me. I can't read their mind, but we've talked enough that I know most of my friends are the same way. What do you say to that, Mr. Smartass? And I have to say, well, you got me. Cab? Or as they like to, the way they call cabs down in Little Rock, taxi! Well, is that attorneys? I never can remember. Or accountants or priests or rabbis or somebody. If you recognize yourself through your thinking, that is not analyzation. And from a more subversive view, a more radical view, At the ordinary level, of course, that is what I meant by sorely relieved. At the ordinary level, great, no complaint, you ought to be happy. And out in the city, people are happy, they just don't realize it in that sense. They're happy to get up and think, hey, it is me, I'm not Brian Gumble. I'm not having the thoughts of a George Bush or anybody. But except me, because I'm familiar with them. It's me. It is me. That kind of recognition, though, in one sense, as stabilizing, as necessary, as all-encompassing it is to ordinary thought, ordinary consciousness, it, from another view, is a very kind of stumbling block from doing anything else. Because as long as you recognize yourself, as long as you take that as being some kind of self-consciousness of a deep nature, not just being walking around conscious, but I actually reflect on what I think. I critique what I think. Is there anything like criticize? Where are you from? I critique even what I think. I analyze it. I ponder it. I step forward. I move back from it. I consider other people's opinions. Sometimes I'll read the National Review, and then I'll read the Conservative Digest, and then I'll read the Liberal Report, and I'll weigh all the consequences, the pros, the cons, and then I will make up my own independent judgment. It is all reflection, though. But you can't tell the ordinary mind, not somebody else, you can't even tell your own ordinary mind that is in no wise even approaching. It's not even in the same neighborhood as what would be impartial analyzation. Because if you're looking at your reflection, and don't jump in here and tell me, yeah, but sometimes I don't like my reflection. Hell, half the time, half the people don't like their reflection. So don't say that. But in order to say, well, wait a minute, I do analyze what I think. I don't just blindly, to use your terms, look in the mirror, my own reflection up here, and just accept it. Half the time I don't like it. I just told you. At any particular time, half the people looking at their reflection, half the time, half the people don't like it. The other half the time, half the people do like it. But in any case, at least you look and you recognize who and where you are. Yes, it's me, and I'm still in my own brain. Still at home, in my own neighborhood. And keep your eye out for those academies that they open up. Real close. Real close. There'll be one in your neighborhood coming soon. Sticking out in the proverbial future makes it sound like that, well, perhaps I haven't been taken in yet. Right. Right. You don't have a student ID card, right? Well, I don't. Are you breathing? Yes. Why? Well, never mind. Looking at one's reflection, let me carry this a little bit further right quick. Looking at one's reflection in here, that is that the only way that you think, forget whether right or wrong, the only way that this thing operates, the only way that this vast, chemical, swampy landscape wherein lightning is always striking, the only way this happens, the only way the rain operates is that lightning hits and it grounds out. It has to have opposition. What passes for analyzation, self-reflection, self-consciousness, etc., is seeing the reflection of oneself in all of the things that one is not. Those of you that didn't care for the Kyroot about the place where the weight of shadows finally collapsed the world, under the weight of that which was not. Kyroots didn't get any better with that, did he? Well, you understand, a shadow doesn't weigh anything, right? Yeah, that's why it's dumb. The place couldn't have collapsed under the weight of shadows. But Kyroots did add the weight of that which was not. Well, that doesn't make any more sense. Sure it does. The weight, the shadow of something, the reflection of something weighs as much as the thing does. It's just ordinary intelligence says it doesn't. Because you're right not to respond at the ordinary level to say, wait, the shadows do not have a weight to start with, so how can you say that they collapsed under the weight of shadows, or to say, well, this world collapsed under the weight of that which was not. That which was not weighs as much as that which is. That which you don't believe up here, that weighs just as much as that which you believe. There's no reason that that which you believe weighs anything. Your reflection of whatever you think weighs the same thing that is what you think I'm looking at, that you look and say, well, all right, there's some things I know. 2 and 2 equals 4 weighs X grams, X pounds, X cosmos, X galaxies, okay? Then 2 and 2 equals not 4. And all this very good. All right, that, the reflection, that which is not true, that which is not so, yeah, right? It weighs the same thing. God, that's frightening, they said, because you almost had me. I almost understood that. Taken out. The reflection has to weigh as much. The antimatter has to weigh as much. It's the same thing. So to recognize one's thoughts is not to be able to analyze them. It in no way is in the same ball game. It has no counterpart. You simply recognize your reflection. And you say, well, I like that, or I don't like that, or that is me, and that part's not me. It's all the same. There's no way out. It has no form of analyzation, because if you recognize yourself via reflection, which is the only way ordinary thought can, you cannot distinguish yourself. There is no way to become, quote, impartial. There is no way to become, quote, analytical, because you cannot get away from yourself. It's a scientist that spills some kind of a smelly substance on his hands in the lab, and he can't go any further until he tracks down this horrible smell. No matter where he looks, everything he touches, it smells, and he doesn't realize it's on his hand. It's like trying to evade your own shadow. It's like trying to say, I could get somewhere, because now I begin to have my own metaphorical insight into what you were saying, you and that clown Kyroot, that shadows do have a weight. And now I understand there is a symbolic significance to that, and if I could get away from that, I'd be free! Yay! Hey, give us a break. How are you going to get away from your shadow in a 3D world? I don't know. You can't. Oh, you can die if you're going to be cheap about it. To be able to recognize yourself, to be sane, to be functionally conscious and intelligent at the ordinary level, is to be aware of this through one way and one way only. I didn't make it up. I just put a description on it. And that's for it to see its reflection. And it sees its reflection in the inescapable, the natural, the unavoidable, anti-whatever it is. The opposing team in this stadium, the ground. If you're the lightning, the ground. If you're the ground, the lightning. That is its only awareness, and that cannot produce anything that would begin to be worthy of the name impartial or anti-analytical. Because all it can do is look at its own reflection and either say yay or nay. Either say, metaphorically or symbolically, hey, am I looking good or what? Or, ooh, I put on a few pounds. It doesn't matter. You recognize yourself, but you cannot distinguish yourself from everything else. And if you're going to analyze anything in the revolutionary sense, it has got to be free from its reflection. It has got to be free from having an evil soap opera twin, Siamese twin brother. It has got to be operating in a place, if we're going to stay with the stadium for a second, a place in the stadium, in a 3D stadium, that is actually into the twilight zone. It's a place in the stadium that nobody can see. Last time I tried to give you the idea of like an analytical blimp above the stadium. But if you're down there and you recognize yourself in the locker room, out on the field only, on the sense that, hey, I know which team I am because there's the opposing team. Or I know which side that I'm for. I know which team I'm for. I'm not out there actively playing right now, but I know which ideas I'm for. How do you know that? Well, you dumb son of a bitch, I can look across the stadium, across the field, and I see all the people hollering for the wrong ideas. I'm no dummy. I'm conscious. You are, at the ordinary level. But that kind of thought cannot analyze itself. It cannot in any way be impartial. And I can't prove that because ordinary people make up the word impartial. And they can say, hey, I know what impartial is. I'm impartial. Prove I'm not. I'm sorry, sir. I stumbled in the wrong place. Of course you can't. Only you know. Only you, in the same sense, to talk about the idea of thinking more than you have to. And I've already admitted, if anybody heard that, an ordinary person, they say, oh, well, hell, I do that. Or they could say, well, I've never done it, but all right, I'll do it right now. Here I go. I just did it. And if I said, no, that's not it. They go, prove it. How do you know? Only you know. Only you know, any person, what is the difference between being analytical, that is, not just about something, but about thought being able to analyze itself. What I was suggesting to you was the real near 5D reality at one time behind all these ideas of know thyself, or that the unexamined life is not worth living, at least in Arkansas. All of these ideas, or a man should be a friend to himself, or a man's real domain, a man's true home is in his mind. All of that, I suggest to you, was the energy behind thought at a certain place being able thinking, being able to analyze itself, but it is unnatural at any given time, at any given place. That is not the nature of thought at the ordinary level. The nature of thought is polarized energy operating in a 3D atmosphere. And the only way that ordinary thought, consciousness, anything you want to call it, can be, quote, aware of itself is by its reflection. And its reflection comes from one place and one place only. One place only. It's seeing your reflection in the eyes of the opposing team. It's seeing your reflection from all of that which you know to be untrue. It's that everything you know, being word one, the only way that you know all that you know is that you know that there's two words in the universe. The right word and the wrong word. That is not analyzation. And you can sit there forever and argue, which would be a good form of self-consciousness. And it's, in some instances, is cheaper and wears better than a brown suit. We have either obviously run out of time, or I think everyone should take their eyebrows and go. And if you're doing that, then I'll say we haven't run out of time, but everyone looks so silly that we're just going to stop the tape. Those who like promises, I guess I can promise or threaten that we'll try and pick it up one more time. But it is pretty straightforward to have taken this long. That this kind of stuff could be called all kinds of things and has been called all kinds of things, and I'd appreciate some of the things that's been called. If it doesn't stop, I'm going to report it to the postal authority. But it would be all the kinds of these cosmic consciousness of Buddha mind, Zen mind, being of a mystical thought partnership with Moses or Jesus or Allah. It is just astounding, once you taste it, to be able to think in such a way and to actually have your thought be able to analyze what it's doing. And then you understand, well, we can call all kinds of things, but that's what they meant about know thyself. Except then you realize, well, all my life I went, well, I know myself more or less. At least I know what it means. You didn't know what it means. You never knew what it meant. You meant, well, I know that if I have over 10 beers, I'm inclined to get in a fight. Hey, are you a philosopher or what? I know if I have 10 beers and don't get in a fight, my girlfriend's out of town, I'm inclined to look for a girl to paint my house. Or I know that I cannot tolerate ignorant people. And ignorant people are, well, people that don't have the right ideas. They don't have the right ideas, such as, who could we use for an example? Perchance, you, perhaps. That is not know thyself. It is in no way being able to analyze that your thinking and analyze its own thoughts. I suspect that we will, in a collective bargaining arrangement, pick it back up next time. But that's about what all this is why sometimes I even let Kyroot, which some of you don't have to sell any idea, but you understand what fun it is. And I just keep coming up with a few new names every now and then. And some of the fun that some of you have had now, you can call it, hey, it's thinking being able to analyze itself. It won't make it any more fun. Of course, that's not true. Here we go, more conditions. Those of you that know what I'm talking about, it does make it more true. The rest of you, if you think, well, wait a minute, just knowing the name of something won't make it more true, you're right. Yeah, but what did you just say? Good night.